Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. No matter what time of night or day, I'm still just as glad you stopped by the channel. Thanks ever so much. This is, of course, the Social Gospel Worship and Learning Center based in Atlanta, Georgia. We're an online church, not a traditional one at all. And all that's taught here is Jesus Christ, the Son of God, crucified, died, and resurrected, only to be raised on the morning of the third day, and who now sits at his Father's right hand, just waiting for that cue from his dad to come and take us home. And take us home he shall. You can be very sure about that. But for now, for today, our Sunday message for this week was to clear up some of the confusion and disinformation, frankly, within the church, and to a lesser extent outside of it. The title will be, What Does the Bible Say About Tithing? And then underneath that, in a subheading format, should we give? And must it be exactly, precisely 10%? These are good questions, and they deserve a look. And that's what I'm going to be doing here for just the next few minutes. I won't keep you long, so stick with me, please. I've got some important points to bring up. And besides, this, if nothing else, is educational. Nothing wrong with a little education once in a while. In searching for a topic worthy of discussion this week, I found myself once again returning to the Holy Scriptures, which I love so much. Only within the pages of the Bible can some wisdom and truth be found, both of which are currently lacking in today's world. Only in the Bible can I find shelter from the madness that surrounds me. I was inspired to go there this time because of some things that are being taught in certain churches, and where I play keyboards each week, in one of them. But for now, I'll keep on playing those keys on Sunday mornings, even if I don't necessarily agree with everything that's being taught there. There is no such thing as a perfect church, you know. Besides, my musical mission, my music ministry, I'm a lifelong piano player, is on a higher level than all that denominational stuff that they teach in so many of the churches today. Man-made theology has nothing to do with the salvation of Jesus Christ at all. But first, before I can dive too deep into this, a little background. One of the things I disagree with is something being taught in many churches having to do with financial stuff. What I mean is the topic of tithing, but only when it is taught incorrectly, as is so often the case. You must, the congregations are commanded, tithe 10% of your income each and every week for as long as you are working. Now, I'm a disabled retiree myself, and yet I was once told I needed to tithe 10% of my retirement check. A Social Security check, for heaven's sake, which would not be affordable since I'm already considered a low-income individual. If I tithe 10%, I wouldn't have money enough for groceries, and that's the truth. So I searched the scriptures, and the following is what I found. I want everybody to go with me to the book of Leviticus in the Old Testament. It's, let's see, Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus will be after that, if my memory serves me correct. Or it may be Numbers first and then Leviticus, and then it ends with Deuteronomy, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, otherwise known as the Law of Moses, amongst all the Jewish viewers today, or tonight. So let me lay this on you. This week's Bible quote and lesson. And the topic of this message, Sunday message today, will be taken from chapter 14, verses 22 through 29 of the book of Leviticus, and I quote, "Be sure to set aside a tenth that your fields produce each year. Eat the tithe of your grain, new wine and olive oil, and the firstborn of your herds and flocks in the presence of the Lord your God, at a place he will choose as a dwelling for his name, so that you may learn to revere the Lord your God always. But if that place is too distant and you have been blessed by the Lord your God and cannot carry your tithe, because the place where the Lord will choose to put his name is so far away, then exchange your tithe for silver, and take the silver with you, and go to the place the Lord your God will choose. Use that silver to buy whatever you like, cattle, sheep, wine or other fermented drink, or anything you wish. Then you and your household shall eat there in the presence of the Lord your God, and rejoice. And do not neglect the Levites living in your towns, for they have no allotment or inheritance of their own. At the end of every 3 years, bring all the tithes of that year's produce and store it in your towns, so that the Levites, who have no allotment or inheritance of their own, and the foreigners, the fatherless, and the widows, who live in your towns, may come and eat and be satisfied, so that the Lord may bless you in all the work of your hands." Close quote. Those 7 verses carry a lot of weight. Now let's dive into this for a few minutes. The predecessor to the Last Supper, if you're Christian or Catholic, or to the Seder dinner, if you are Jewish, was the tithe. And the eating of the tithe in the presence of the Lord and the other people there. That was the predecessor, people. Verse 22, that first verse there, is such a stark contrast to the rule of 10% each week that there really is no comparison at all. Instead of weekly, the 10% tithe was done once annually at harvest time. The harvest, the herds, the flocks, the new wine, and the olive oil, all of everything was brought into the presence of the Lord, so that you may learn to revere the Lord always, as the Bible says. Now I ask you, when was the last time you were invited to a dinner by God? Moreover, the tithe was to be eaten in the Lord's presence. It was never meant to be given to some con artist on TV posing as a preacher. Verses 24 and 25 are for those who live too far away from the designated place of offering, considering that all transportation was done on foot back then. Notice that those people who live too far away are to exchange that which would have been their tithe for silver. You go to the place that the Lord your God will choose. Use that silver to buy whatever you like, the scriptures say, cattle, sheep, wine, or other fermented drink, or anything you wish, and then you and your household shall eat there in the presence of the Lord your God and rejoice. Close quote. Now here are some biblical ways you can contribute in modern times. Notice here that the currency specified by the Lord is silver. It's not paper money. There was no paper money back in those days. Paper money has only been around for about the last few hundred years. Money, banking, and credit did not exist back then. If God prefers silver to fiat currency, then that's just fine with me. Verse 27 said, "And do not neglect the Levites living in your towns, for they have no allotment or inheritance of their own." What's a Levite? Well, a Levite was a temple priest, set aside for exclusively priestly duties, similar to a pastor or rabbi today. There are still Levites in churches today, people who serve, who own no property or investments, and who have little, if anything, in financial assets. Some don't even own their own transportation. I draw no salary like a brick and mortar pastor would when I do this online. I rely 100% on donations. It's just that I never ask people to donate 10% of their income. Anyone who would like to help with the donation can do so through PayPal, where we are a registered nonprofit, or through Stripe, stripe.com. The email address for the donations by way of PayPal or by way of Stripe can be found in the comments section just below your screen there, if you're looking at it in default mode. You know what I mean. You can also give me some claps if you're reading this on Medium, or subscribe. The subscription instructions, as well as the paid version of the ministry here, can be found there too. It's all at the bottom. I'll make another comment about that when I close. But now, stick with me here for just a few more minutes. Now here's a list of what God considers to be the most vulnerable people. Quoting the scriptures once again, verses 28 and 29. "At the end of every 3 years, bring all the tithes of that year's produce and store it in your towns, so that the Levites, who have no allotment or inheritance of their own, and the foreigners, the fatherless, and the widows who live in your towns may come and eat and be satisfied." Close quote. If churches follow this teaching today like they're supposed to, and if they obey the commands they are charged with by God, there would be no poverty anywhere in the world. So here we find the solutions to social welfare, economic self-sufficiency, and poverty, all in one amazing and eloquent sentence. Bring an extra tithe. Notice here it doesn't specify an additional 10% over and above. For, in the order of God's importance, or in order of the importance in God's sight, the foreigners, the fatherless, meaning not only kids without dads, but also and especially immigrants, also and especially orphans and widows. Those are the most vulnerable right there. I find it more than a little interesting that God puts those who we call illegal immigrants at the top of his list of vulnerable people. Now, if we would only follow these commandments, my dear readers, we could eliminate hunger and the immigration crisis. all in one fell swoop. So, but if you do all these things, the word says, the works of your hands will become blessed by God. Quoting the scripture, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. Close quote. If we follow these commandments, we will all be blessed and our life will reflect that. If we don't, people will go hungry while a few will have more than they could ever consume. And yet they hold on to it all anyway because they're too greedy and too selfish to share it with anybody. To share anything with anybody. Isn't this precisely what is happening in the world we live in today? The term economic inequality is on everyone's lips, and so is the term civil war. Or at least here in the U.S., something urgently needs to be done about the former, and I don't believe the latter is the way to go about it. What needs to be done instead is to follow God's instructions. If you buy something that requires assembly, you're going to have problems putting it together if you ignore the instructions. It becomes much easier when you follow the directions, right? Okay, well, follow God's instructions, and there will be no more needy people. Do all these things, and then God will bless the works of your hands. And only until, mind you, only until. That includes the Bible lesson and commentary for this week. Hope you got something out of this. I hope somebody got blessed by it, inspired by it. I even hope that someone here who has not previously done so has given their life to the Lord, has put Him in charge of his or her life, so that all things will work out well for the glory of God. All things working out well. If you'd like to make a donation, again, the directions are in the comment section at the bottom. You'll have to hit the more, the word more, which is a link, and then the rest of it comes up. All the instructions are right down there. You can subscribe to the blog with the paid version as another way to help support us. The blog comes out in text form twice a week, plus 2 videos a week on top of that, and more when I have the time to put some in there. There will be some promotional stuff from time to time in there too. And that's it. I want to thank each and every one of you for the privilege of your time. You are also very, very much appreciated. Please give me a like and a share or two and a subscribe. The subscription to the video channel, the YouTube channel, is free. There's your incentive. If you, anyone who wants to get the paid version of the blog, it's $5 a month or $50 a year, which works out to about 16 cents a day. On the other hand, if you can't afford to give anything at all, you will never, ever be judged here for that. Never. So don't worry about it. Put all those worries out of your mind. Worries don't come from God. Worries come from the devil. And so, that's it. This is the end of the message for today. I hope everybody got something out of it. And as I said before, having nothing further to say about this for right now, everybody be blessed. Yes, I said be blessed in Jesus' mighty name.